And as part of ongoing deliberations to address issues of perceived religious discrimination in the country, the National Peace Council and other stakeholders from all religious backgrounds are proposing that parents should be given the free will to select schools that they believe will allow their ward to practice their religion without any hindrance. This was part of a 10-point communique issued at the end of deliberations held in March to address issues of religious discrimination, particularly in schools and other public places. The 10-point communique, according to the National Peace Council, which led the deliberations, will need the input of the Ministry of Education, the Ghana Education Service on the way forward. And we have on the phone line now the General Secretary of the Ghana Christian Council of Ghana, Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong. Good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, my sister. Let's say good afternoon to your cherished viewers also.
All right. It's quite a complex, sensitive subject to tackle. How are we? You've mentioned that we need the input of the ministry, that's of the parents who are key stakeholders in this. How are we going to really streamline it so it's sane, and can it even be achieved?
Let me say thank you for the opportunity. And like you said, the communique emerged out of the National Stakeholders Forum that we held a week ago. And it is the forum that made the recommendation that you just mentioned. We had religious leaders, Christian, Muslim, traditional leaders. We had GES, Director General, Ghana Education Service, Ministry of Education, and all that in the meeting. And we are talking about religious tolerance, but we also realize that it has something to do with freedoms that people have. For instance, if I choose, as we have now, option 1, option 2, option 3 in the computer selection program, I'm a Christian, I choose, say, a Christian school as my first choice. Now, if they don't find that for me, they find me a school, and it could be, say, Islamic school. Now, I go there right from the beginning with some level of resentment because I did not use that environment. So I go there, and it becomes difficult for me to adjust, and religious tolerance, sometimes a bit complex. A Muslim will choose, say, Tia Media, and if they are not able to find you that, they get you to Anglican secondary school. And the environment, to begin with, is something that student and the parent may not want. So one of the recommendations in the communique, that is number 4, is saying that let us allow parents the space. Already the Constitution allows people to have that freedom to choose where they want their children to be educated.
Yes.
That case, if even I'm a Muslim and I choose a Christian school, I do that for some good reasons, and therefore the level of tolerance will also be higher.
Right, but even with the current system, I mean, for a young a student, a pupil who wants to go to the senior high school, they do that with their parents, because the schools you choose are probably schools that your parents you've talked about. So if it's first, second, third, that's already been catered for. So when you go there, you only have to adhere to the school's own tradition as well.
Years ago, what you just stated was what was happening. You are a parent, you walk to any school of your choice for admission. Now, it is a semi kind of what was happening years ago. They group the schools. So you will choose. But if they don't get you your first choice, they get you your second choice. If they don't get your second, they get you your third option.
Yes, but
if they don't get that, they find school for you.
Yes,
You know, there have been instances where people have found themselves in schools that they have not selected. So now, at the meeting, what we're saying was that can we have other options? Say other options that are purely public school, government school, schools that are purely Islamic. Another option that are only Christian, so that when people are even selected, then they stay. If I want to be in Islamic school, I stay there. Then if I don't get my first choice, I get a second choice, which is Islamic school. So you get me environment that I want my child to be educated. Now it doesn't work.
Dr. Puni, I would want you to hold on a bit for me, because we have the coordinator for the computer school selection placement system, George Atabuating, on the line. George, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure you've listened to the points being raised by the secretary, the general secretary of the Ghana Christian Council. I mean, is that possible? How is the current system? The reason why we introduced one to give everyone a fair ground, a fair opportunity to go to the schools they choose once they have the right grades for it, to deface it, to eliminate corruption. And now there's the issue of the discrimination which has come up. How can we improve it? How do we blend that to fit into the current system?
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your viewers. You know, the whole placement system is based on merit. It's based on the actual student's performance. Now, before we do the placement, every student is required to choose 4 schools. Choose 4 schools that he or she intends to pursue SHS education nationwide. Unless and we have 2 options. Either you opt for the 70%, which means that you can choose any school in Ghana. That's irrespective of where you find yourself. You can choose any school. And then the 30% are those who find themselves within a 16-kilometer radius of a school. Let's say Achimota. Then all the schools, community schools in Hacho, in Dome, once you attend a school within that range, then you choose 30% because that is the only school you want to go into. And that is even based on merit. So we don't restrict students whatsoever as to the schools they can choose. Students are required to choose. Indeed, if you look at this, the selection booklet, we've categorized the schools. They are all in options, from options 1 to option 5. The option 1, 2, 3 are the schools, the public schools. That's the public schools scattered around the country. Options 1, 2, 3. And then we have vocational and technical schools in option 4. And then the private schools, all the private schools who have registered with GES are also in option 5. So that is what we, Once the student gets that selection booklet, the schools are there.
Okay.
He or she just has to make a choice. That's it. So we don't restrict students.
George,
now, once they've selected the schools, then we do the placement. And last year, we introduced this system where you could even text and confirm the schools that you chose before at the time that you were doing the registration, the schools that you chose. You confirm those schools before we even do the placement. So during the placement, the whole thing is based on merit. Your actual scores, the scores that you obtain during the BECE examination. That is that.
Okay.
Once you miss out on all your 4 schools, then we select the schools that do have vacancies, and then we send them to the schools again for the students to make additional choices, and that is even based on merit.
Hello, George.
So we don't send students to schools they've not chosen. We don't do that.
All right, George, your point is well made. My question is, are you saying you've never had a situation where an individual has been placed in a school that they never chose? I just want that from you. They never, ever chose. They didn't.
You know, in the past, it used to occur. Because at some point, I think 2006 or so, we didn't have enough vacancies within the public schools. So what we did was that we sent most of the students to private schools, and that created a lot of confusion. So since then, that thing has never happened. There are cases where the student will come to you and opt to go to a private school. That one we do. But to send a student to a school which he or she has not chosen, we don't do that. It's against the rules.
Okay.
It's against the rules. That is why I said that even in the event that we do the second placement, we give the schools out, the schools with vacancies, we give them out to the students, for the students to make choices.
All right. But, George, given the concern that has come up that, for instance, I'm a Muslim girl, I go to Holy Child, which is a Catholic school, and so you must conform to the traditions there. I mean, is this the sensitivity of it is why we're having this discussion? Is this something that you think the computer placement should probably consider?
No, can you come again? I didn't hear the question.
I'm asking if the proposal by the Christian Council, is this something that you would be considering? And if you will, what impact do you think that would have on the computer placement system?
Let me tell you what we do now. We have some mission schools, especially like St. James, for instance. You know, after aside from the BECE examination, they also do internal exams. Okay, that is what they use for their those who want to pursue the theological training. That's the priest, the priest training. So before they give us the number of students they can take, that's the vacancy. Let's say they can take 200. The overall vacancy is 200, and it's spread across the courses: business, general arts, science, visual arts, and all that. What they do is that they take, let's say, 80. They take 80 out of the 200 and bring us 120 students. So the 80 students are going to come from them. That's those who have taken their internal examination and want to pursue that priesthood training. That's what we do.
Okay.
So they bring us 120 students. There are so many schools which do that. Pope John, for instance, does the same thing.
All right.
So
but
it's something we do. I'm not understanding him clearly, because the fact of the matter is everything boils down to merit. Everything boils down to merit. If the student chose, let's say, I want a mission. If a student chose, let's say, St. James, let me use St. James again, and he's a Muslim, as long as the student performed and has the required marks to go to St. James, he has to go there.
All right,
we
but
can't stop the student from going there.
If that also offends his faith, if that would prevent him from practicing, if the school would prevent him from being who he is in terms of his religion, then obviously, I mean, you can't say that because his merits, they should just let him go there.
Well, that is debatable.
But
my responsibility is that what the Secretariat does is to process raw marks of students and place them into schools that they've chosen. As long as their marks can take them to that particular.
All right, George, do you think this will have dire consequences?
But anything outside that, I don't think I can talk about it.
Do you think that this will have dire consequences on why the computer placement system was set up in the first place?
I don't think so. Because in the olden days, that discretion was left to headmasters. Right. And we thought there wasn't, there was a lack of transparency. It wasn't clear enough. So they opted for the computerized system, and it's been running for the past 10 years.
All right.
And believe me, the system has worked to perfection. Look at some of the schools today.
Thank you very much. We'll go back to the phone line, and that was George Boateng. He is the coordinator for the computer placement, school placement system. We'll go back to the phone line and speak to the General Secretary who's on the line. And Dr. Opuni, I'm sure you listen to what he says. I mean, there's room for some discussion, but it doesn't look like a lot can be done about it because it's computer. Anyway, it's defaced.
Yeah, let me say good afternoon to that my brother who I cherish and respect so much. Like I said earlier on, that issue was raised at the meeting. It's not coming from me. It's not coming from even Christian Council of Ghana. And at the stakeholder meeting that we held last week, Deputy Minister of Education was there. Acting Director General of GES was there. And the meeting raised the issue we are discussing, that now the computer selection process, it doesn't consider the religious background of students. But because religious practices are now becoming issue on campuses, that must also be considered in the computerized selection process. So that is, he said that he didn't get me. And this is the issue, that maybe that is something we have not considered, that religious environment now has become an issue. And so the selection must begin to respond to the emerging challenges that we are having as a country. So it must be revisited. That's all that the meeting said. And I wish we sit down and consider what the meeting said. I don't think I have immediate answer. I'm not ignorant in educational management. I have shared about 4 senior high schools, including Plumper College. So I understand some of the issues he's raising. I know how the challenges are.
All right.
But I'm not talking about my personal self and knowledge or not Christian Council. But the meeting we held at Kofi Annan Peace Center, the communique is saying that we must revisit the computer selection process, because at the moment, Ghanaian students and parents have raised issues that there are environments, their children are being educated, that the challenges there must be addressed. One of them is that then you give the parents the freedom to choose where they want their children to be educated without interference.
All right.
But how we do that, right now, I don't have all the answers.
All right.
And
thank you very much.
The communique call for that. We continue the dialogue.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Opunifimpo is the General Secretary for the Christian Council of Ghana.